Dr. O'Ryan?
We're gonna figure it out.
Dr. O'Ryan is the emergency.
What's that?
I said, Dr. O'Ryan is the emergency. We got it.
Give me a countdown when you're ready.
3, 2, 1.
Good evening. My name is Joe Stronowski, Chair of the Rockport Planning Board. At this time, it looks like we have a quorum here. And I would also like to introduce Scott Gazelle, who is new to the Planning Board, who is, has an alternate seat. And so at this time, I would like to seat Scott as a full voting member. And with that, I will call the meeting to order at 5:32. So 5:32 on June 27th, 2023. Planning Board is comprised of volunteers appointed at the discretion of the Select Board. Our charge is to ensure that the applications that come before us comply with the town's land use ordinance and Rockport Comprehensive Plan. The board must determine whether there is sufficient evidence in the record, which is the material supplied by the applicant, to support a decision to approve the application. This is accomplished by comparing that information in the record to the requirements of the ordinance and statutes. We have a few items on the agenda tonight for review. Actually, 2 revisions and then some minutes and documents to review. Before we start, does anyone on the board wish to identify a conflict of interest on any of the applications presented tonight that would make it difficult to judge these applications fairly and objectively? If so, I ask that you identify these conflicts now. Okay, hearing none, we will proceed. Orion, did we receive any written comments from the public? Anyone in the public?
No.
Concerning tonight's applications?
No.
Okay, no. Okay. All right, so then with that, we'll proceed to the first revision to final site plan tonight. Revision to final site plan for a new fire station in the town of Rockport, located at 624 West Street, Rockport, Maine, 04856, and identified as map 18, lot 79, within the zoning 906 zoning district. Property is owned by the town of Rockport and is being represented by Bill Lane of Gartley and Dorsky. So I'll ask you to please step up to the table and we'll get started. So this is a revision to a plan that was initially presented, I think, last March of 2022.
I think that's right.
Let's see. So I'm going to ask those individuals that were not on the board in March of 2022, have you had sufficient time to go through that material that was previously presented? And I think that would include Jeff and Scott and Jan.
Yes.
So Jeff.
I went through it at the time that it was being presented.
Okay.
Because I was in the process of applying to the board, so I was following it as it happened.
Okay,
I've
very good.
revisited only
Okay.
recently, but not
Okay,
before.
good. Thank you. Jan?
Yes, I've gone through.
You've gone through it. Scott?
I've gone through it.
You've
yeah.
gone through it. Okay, very good. Okay, so with that, I don't want to go all the way back to ground zero. So I'd ask that you please outline what the revisions are and hold it to that. And as we go through this, I guess as I went back through and I reviewed the video from last time, I would like just to make sure that the board does document a couple of the items that came up clearly, and that we didn't have a finding of facts last time. There were a couple things that were a little wishy-washy, and so there's a couple things, probably 2 or 3, that I'm going to want to go back through and just make sure that we just have those tied up.
Okay.
Okay, so Amanda, right?
Yes.
Amanda, Amanda, if you, Bill, whoever can just go through what the changes are between what we saw last March and today.
Sure.
I'd appreciate that.
I can start with the floor plan change, which is sort of the instigator of this. So we have proceeded through the construction drawings for the project. As we approached that goal, the town, looking forward into the future, trying to further assess their needs and things that were happening recently, looked at the office layout as we had it and decided that it would be to the town's advantage to add additional office space in the building. So originally, the plan had one office, located office number 1, as you see it there in the center of the plan on the screen. We added offices 2 and 3 to the plan. That, in the process of shifting plan areas around, instigated a change to the location of the ADA toilet room that serves mainly the meeting room as well as staff, and then the storage space as well. So the AV closet there is now separated from the rest of the storage that's adjacent to the meeting room. And if the plan were scrolled down, you'd be able to see those 2 spaces right there next to the exterior stair. So that added an overall change to the square footage of 351 square feet by kicking those 2 rooms out and then shifting the bedrooms upward to accommodate that. So that was the reason for the change. We've also had further development on the lighting, and I believe it's 3 pole lights have been added to the site, so we have that information in the package. Chief Peasley has also been working to sort of iron out the details around his needs for an antenna on the building, and so that is now a roof-mounted antenna shown on the elevation and general location, although we do think, that location is flexible and we can move that, but it is a roof-mounted antenna of fairly significant height, so we wanted to review that with you as well. So the pole lighting is in your package. You used to have that graphic. Bill can talk a little bit more about those items.
Yep, and so included in this submission should be available to you lighting cut sheets, and the site electrical engineer has prepared a photometric plan as well. So that is in the submission demonstrating compliance with light standards, nothing but cutoff fixtures and nothing extending beyond property lines. The footprint of the building changed by those 300-some square feet, and so that's modified our grading in adjacent to the southerly limits of the building near that staff entrance. We've checked the HHE design, and it's still adequate for the anticipated staffing level, and annotated on the plan where those updated lights are, and annotated that there's going to be a building mounted rather than a ground mounted antenna. So those are the substantive changes to the site plan.
I guess I'd just point out too that even though we did add this 300 square feet and change, the general design concept of the building has not changed, and the overall height of the building has not changed either. It's very similar in that there's a long, tall gable that cuts across the vehicle bay area, and the back side is the lower hip-style roof.
Okay. So let's, if anyone has any clarifying questions to ask, let's do that, and then before we get into deliberation. Tom?
Did the addition of this meeting space impact the parking situation?
It wasn't a revision to meeting space, it was a revision of an office.
Okay.
The meeting room itself did not change.
Okay,
in footprint.
I'm assuming an office space or administrative space could be used for meetings.
Now, this is a fairly small footprint office for staff to have the opportunity to do their reporting after runs in the anticipation that the town,
Okay,
at some
so it's
point.
not really additional personnel.
That's correct.
Okay.
The office layouts are shown there too, so you can see the rough size of them. They're on the order of 8 by 10, 8 by 11, so they're pretty small rooms.
Couple clarifying questions. So just to kind of get us a point of reference here. So the building envelope changed a little bit because you added these offices on. Are there like 2 corners of the building that were anchored? Are the front 2 corners by the garage bay is the same?
Yes.
Okay.
Three, in fact, yes.
Okay.
Everything
Exactly.
facing The common line with Tolman, or formerly Tolman, and everything on
Okay,
West Street
just-
is the same.
Good, just so we don't have to go back through that.
Yes.
And then the other question is, there is an antenna on the lot today. I think that's a tower, freestanding tower or freestanding antenna. Is that true?
There's a roof-mounted antenna.
There's a roof-mounted antenna today?
Yeah,
Okay. How, like, can you give us an idea how tall is it? Like
approximately 32 feet. something along
32
those.
feet?
Yeah.
Okay, and so just as a point of reference, that's, okay, never mind, I'll get to that later. I'll let that go. Just clarifying. I think that's the only clarifying questions I had. Anybody else?
No, I just wondered, I had a question about parking, but that got answered for me. But I am curious, somewhere here it references that the appropriate number of parking spaces is a multiplier of 1.2, and you end up with 4 parking spaces with the possibility of 5 employees.
So can you hold that thought, Jan? Okay, we're going to get into deliberation, we'll talk about that. But I just want to, if there's anything you didn't understand of what they presented,
Oh, no, that's fine. I'm sorry.
okay?
One question was, there was some information that came in from Orion this afternoon. I haven't had a chance to look at it. Can you just summarize what that information packet is?
Yep, those were the lighting cut sheets themselves,
Okay.
the individual fixture type, manufacturer's standard product information.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we understand what was presented, we understand what changed, what stayed the same, most everything stayed the same. So now let's, if there's any other deliberation or questions, let's get into that. So why don't we go ahead and start with your question, Jan,
Well, the question was.
about parking?
Relatively quickly, was it that the specs shows 5 employees and 4 parking spaces, and I'm wondering
Yeah.
why that
So
seems to be the way
we
that
tried to
works.
track what was the most equivalent parking allocation within the ordinance parameters, and there's a
Right.
provision for industrial space.
Right. Do we know if it's likely that all 5 employees would ever be there at the same time? And that there would be a parking issue?
There's not 5 employees presently planned to be hired at this point in,
Then I'm fine.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, but it sounds like there's provisions with the sleeping someday that there might be 5 people sleeping there for.
There are 5 bunks
There are
and
Yeah,
bunks,
right, right.
allocated, yeah.
Okay, so that would be 5 people for that.
Yep.
Okay.
Other questions about parking while we're on that?
Well, do you want to come back to this, Joe, or do you want to go into more detail on parking?
Okay, well, like I said, I've got maybe just 2 or 3 things that I just wanted to review that were squishy last time when I watched the video from last March, that I just want to make sure that we resolve in a clean way. So parking was one of them. So I'm not sure what your comment is.
Well, I'm just kind of curious, since the meeting room is designed to have, be a community space as well, when you get to capacity with the parking that's there, what's the expectation of where the additional parking is going to come from? And for instance, could there be a conversation with the abutter to, make a little walkway behind the building? I'm thinking of the abutter, I think it's Camden Glass or somebody like that. They've got a fairly good-sized flat area off on the one end, and I don't know if there's been any kind of conversation to explore overflow that way, so people can park their car and get safely into the facility without having to cross Route 17.
Yeah, I don't think there's an intention to make people find alternate parking spaces. I think the town's objective here is to have a meeting space that serves the functions of the emergency personnel that might be utilizing that site and building. Not that we're opening up a building for all community uses, but if a small enough group wishes to ask the town to utilize it, the town's amenable and would provide that opportunity. But the parameters would be, you have a limited number of parking spaces allocated, and annotating a route through an adjacent property or pursuing an adjacent route to the property has not been expressed to us as something the town is intending to do at this point.